A career-halting injury, the ripping up of months of creative planning, the final breakup of a landscape-changing wrestling faction, the dissolution of a backstage political power, the in-ring comeback of a future Hall of Famer, and the beginning of a decade-long departure for another. All of these things happened in the aftermath of one match, a 10-man tag team match on a random episode of Monday Night Raw in the summer of 2002. Join me on a deep dive into this decagonal dispute that, in many ways, altered the trajectory of many WWE stars. At the time, the company was in a state of flux. The post-coital ecstasy of winning the Monday Night War had worn off following a lackluster invasion storyline, and the amorous mood had been tainted by the Panda people taking Titan's F away. The now renamed World Wrestling Entertainment was on a downturn, with house show business and TV buy rates falling by the week. A plan was in place to reignite the flames of passion amongst the piledriver population by WWE creating its own internal competition, turning Raw and SmackDown into their own bespoke brands. Steve Austin as the figurehead of the red team and The Rock as the figurehead of the blue. Slight problem: within a month of what has become known in pro wrestling parlance as the brand split, Steve Austin had walked out of the company and The Rock was bound for Hollywood. The race was on to create new top talent on both sides of the E divide, whilst leaning on the old guard as they waited for the new meat to cook. SmackDown had the likes of Triple H, Chris Jericho and Kurt Angle ring generaling it, whilst Raw was being propped up by the likes of The Undertaker, Ric Flair, and the infamous WWE retread of the New World Order. This is not to be confused with the black and white shite of early 2002, featuring a half-hearted and half-witted reunion tour. From the universally beloved Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the seemingly immobile Kevin Nash, and the largely unpopular Scott Hall. You see, by the summer, Scott Hall had been fired, and Hollywood Hulk Hogan was enjoying an Indian summer in the red and yellow. So Kevin Nash needed some new friends to play with, or at least help him look at the adjective. Taking on its final form, the NWO became a hybrid of WCW's trend-setting, record-smashing zeitgeist guys and the Clique, the very real backstage band of brothers that ran roughshod through the political minefield that was 90s sports entertainment. Recruited to the New World Order were X-Pac, a long-standing buddy making a shock return in the wake of Hogan's departure. Welcome back, Six. The Big Show, who also had left and rejoined the NWO, except he'd done it multiple times, presumably changing his email address every time to get the introductory discount like I do with HelloFresh. Booker T, somebody that Kevin Nash had wanted in the original NWO. He had a very brief yet confusing dalliance with this O2 version of the group and was saved from storyline oblivion by Goldust of all people. And most recently in our timeline for today, a returning demon-free Shawn Michaels. WWE had several non-starter attempts to bring the Heartbreak Kid back, but now Shawn was a new man and ready to ease back into the wrestling world proper. Many at the time would just see Shawn Michaels coming in as another non-wrestler, joining a faction of mainly non-wrestlers. But it was just good to see Shawn Michaels happy and healthy again, I have to say. The NWO, regardless, were back in POG form. There was one master slammer they wanted to get their hands on in the form of Triple H. Shawn, Kevin, X-Pac made it clear at the King of the Ring pay-per-view in 02 that Trips, despite being a good guy on the other show, had an NWO shirt and a company car with his name on it. This new NWO tale was no longer trying to recapture that chaos from the mid-90s, but build around the lads looking to take full control of Monday Night Raw and coerce their IRL Bezzy Triple H to join them in their jolly japes. Away from the cameras and behind the curtain, it seemed like the New World Order's search for power was already over, as there was growing backstage unrest over how much creative control they, along with Triple H, had over WWE television. Kevin Nash was buddying up with Triple H and Vince McMahon backstage and protecting his mates from the wrath of management, as Figure 4 put it. Hunter had also copped some bad vibes from the locker room when he had creative plans for a John Cena Vince McMahon storyline nixed. A planned angle would have seen new boy Jonathan Cena slapping Vince McMahon only in his second appearance on WWE television. Triple H, however, argued the only person who should be getting physical with Vince was Hogan, with whom a long-term feud was bubbling, so that whole idea was scrapped. Regardless of where your opinion falls on that scenario, the locker room reportedly saw that and a few other behind-the-scenes movements as a return to mid-90s backstage politics, the Clique continuing their creative control conniving, canonically curtailed by the curtain call. Generally, the backstage energy was at a low ebb at this point. As we say, business across the board was pretty bleak, so you can kind of get why. Now, when it comes to Kevin Nash, he'd been coming to Raw frequently, but was unable to compete due to a biceps injury, adding to the perceived impotence of the New World Order in 2002, relegated to promos and weird segments opposite Booker T and Goldust. They even formed a brief alliance with then Raw GM Ric Flair, something that would have given viewers who lived through the first NWO invasion a bit of a conniption fit. But needs must when you've got a faction that consists of an injured guy, a half-injured guy who doesn't reportedly like losing too often, and the Big Show. There was some good news as June turned to July, though. Kevin Nash had recovered from his biceps injury and was cleared to get back in the ring. Vince McMahon decided in a last-minute script meeting that Kevin Nash should return to action pronto, Tonto. A show-long storyline for the July 8th Raw was concocted that would culminate with Kevin Nash getting back into the ring as part of a 10-man tag team main event. The match was, according to numerous sources, one of those 11th hour Vince McMahon creative decisions that are the very backbone of his era at the WWE helm. Nash was booked on a flight to Philly to be part of Raw and make a surprise in-ring comeback on that night. Something that Nash reportedly wasn't best thrilled about. You see, Kevin Nash was indeed cleared to return, but usually the process would be weeks, maybe months of training off camera to shake off the rust and iron out any kinks in the armor. Nash wasn't afforded the luxury of that, and it was seemingly decided now that he was clear that he should get back to wrestling. Like your dad joking about having hamster burgers for tea during Fluffy's funeral, it was far too soon. Admittedly, a 10-man tag would keep Kevin's involvement to a minimum, but it still, in hindsight, was too soon to be doing it. Now, regardless, Diesel was getting back on the highway. Titan Towers trucked on, and that truck was destined for Philadelphia, where the gang would take part in a cursed 10-man tag. It was Monday Night Raw, July the 8th, 2002. We're at the First Union Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In the rush to get Kevin Nash match ready, a very simple, very innocent blunder was made by, of all people to bring into the conversation at this point, Disco Inferno. Kevin Nash says that WWE Delta dashed his ring gear to the arena, a package that was very kindly put together at Kev's house by his friend Glenn Gilberti. However, one thing that wasn't apparently on the attire delivery was Kev's knee brace, something he'd been wearing to matches for a good while. He ended up having to have his return match, reluctantly, without that knee brace. Get to that in a bit. Nash's knee brace wasn't the only AWOL element of this planned 10-man tag. It was reported that x-pac had called the First Union Center and told WWE management that he was in the hospital. Scariest part of all, Sean Waltman says he has no recollection of how he even got to the hospital in the first place. Waltman was released, thankfully, and with new travel arrangements, made it to the arena within an hour and a half before Raw went live. A very touch-and-go moment ahead of a show that would feature x-pac and the NWO in a story that ran through the entire 2-hour broadcast. So Raw gets underway. It was a show that saw a confusing match between Ric Flair and a star-struck and pressured Steven Richards. It was a show that saw Jeff Hardy make William Regal cry after beating him for the European title. And it plays host to the award-winningly dreadful mixed tag team match with Christopher Nowinski and Jackie Gator facing Bradshaw and Trish Stratus. Yes, that one. It's a packed dinner before we even get to the main course. The show opened proper with Booker T calling out the New World Order and Eddie Guerrero coming out instead, looking for a fight after he and Benoit got done over by Bubba Ray and Spike Dudley the previous week. So we get an impromptu match between them that ends with Booker T getting the win. Post-match, Benoit and Guerrero put a beating on Booker, but the other half of Bookdust, Goldust, along with Bubba and Spike, send the naughty boys packing. Goldust then tries to recruit the Dudley boys in their fight against the New World Order, whilst dressed as founding father Thomas Jefferson, of course. to no avail. We then get Benoit defeating Bubba Ray by submission, and when he and Spike are set on post-match by Benoit and Guerrero, Booker T and Goldust return the favour from earlier. Eddie and Chris are vexed that the Dudleys and Bookdust are all up in their business. And after a brief verbal run-in with the NWO, they're even more so vexed. The New World Order are en route to the ring with something important to say. They warn Triple H that he has 2 weeks to decide if he's with them or against them. And they reveal that Kevin Nash has been medically cleared to return to the ring. And they're going to celebrate that with a 10-man tag team match. Kevin Nash, The Big Show, X-Pac, and those two lads from a minute ago, Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. And they're going to face Booker T, Goldust, Bubba Ray, Spike, and whoever they can get as a tag team partner, who would turn out to be then Intercontinental Champion Rob Van Dam. A little note about the other players in this butterfly effect of a contest before we go any further. Booker T and Goldust, as you've heard, have become a surprising double act. Plans to break them up were put in motion, only for them to revert back to their odd couple ways due to extensive popularity. The Dudley boys had been divided during the brand split, leaving Bubba Ray Dudley half entertaining a singles run, whilst making peace with their punching bag of a half-brother, Spike Dudley. Devon Dudley also got himself a new best friend on SmackDown in the form of future world champion and guardian of the galaxy, Dave Bautista. Rob Van Dam had survived the Alliance storyline despite gaining a reputation for being somewhat reckless in the ring, with several WWE luminaries bearing witness to some rogue RVD kicks with the scars to prove it. As IC champ, he was the final stop on the path of dominance, being cut by Brock Lesnar, who would headline SummerSlam a month later, fighting for the undisputed championship. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit had both missed out on the whole invasion situation, despite being perfect WCW defector material. Benoit had returned after a year on the shelf following a neck injury. Eddie Guerrero, meanwhile, had been released from his contract in early 01 after a drunk driving arrest. He'd worked tirelessly to turn his life around, and it resulted in him being welcomed back just a few months before this match. Guerrero and Benoit had a planned rivalry in place with Stone Cold Steve Austin heading into the summer, but Austin's departure left them without a clear direction. Hence why we're scrapping with Bookdust and the Demi Dudleys. The Wrestling Observer revealed how this 10-man main was supposed to go down. Kevin Nash, back in the saddle and better than ever, was going to single-handedly lay out all the good guys and drop Booker T with a jackknife powerbomb for the win. And from here, they were going to build Raw around Big Sexy, as the wheels were in motion for a showdown between Kevin Nash and Triple H at SummerSlam. At vengeance, Triple H would spurn the advances of the New World Order, consequently be at loggerheads with the lads of the NWO throughout the summer, leading to that match. And this would serve, this 10-man tag, to remind fans what an unstoppable monster Kevin Nash still is before he locks up with the game in August. Plus, it would allow Bezzy mates Paul and Kev to play together on company time at SummerSlam. Winner, winner, Chef Boyardee overstuffed beef ravioli dinner. All was going well in the first few minutes of this match. Despite X-Pac's dramatic circumstances, he was absolutely dialed into this one, looking as crisp as he ever has. The babyfaces took turns in beating him up for a bit, and then the heels took turns in beating up Spike Dudley and Rob Van Dam. Shawn Michaels coaching the heels from ringside in his backwards flat cap, being a sneaky boy, all as planned. Rob Van Dam chased Shawn Michaels up the ramp at one point, only to be flattened by a wild Brock Lesnar bursting into existence, thus keeping him away from the all-out babyface earth-scorching that Kevin Nash was about to administer. All going according to plan. Kevin Nash clubbers Booker T from the apron to stop his momentum. This all leads to Big Sexy getting the tag and his first official in-ring action in several months. He steps over the ropes. He Irish whips Booker T, gives him a big old boot to the face. He then runs to attack the babyface corner and seems to trip on the now grounded Booker T, it seems. He steadies himself, he punches Bubba Ray on the apron, and then he hits the ground, grabbing his leg and screaming in pain. And I mean screaming. He's bellowing. and he's now in a heap on the far side of the ring. Speaking on Click This, his podcast, Kevin Nash described the pain as like a shotgun. Something's gone wrong here. Nash credits Bubba Ray Dudley for helping direct traffic when the match fell apart at this point, coming over and protecting him whilst all of this was going on. The majority of the people in that match probably didn't know the extent of what had happened. They almost definitely didn't know just how severe all this was either. Earl Hebner goes up to Kevin Nash, who is still in a heap on the floor, to see what's happened, and according to Nash himself on his podcast, Nash tells Hebner, "I'm effed," only he didn't say F. With that, the F leads to Hebner throwing up the X, the dreaded sign that something legitimately has gone wrong. Now, the match here completely breaks down. You can watch all the wrestlers running in and out of the ring. One to watch is Shawn Michaels. He sends Goldust crashing into the ring post. He slides into the ring behind the referee's back. He pulls Booker T to the center of the ring and hits him with a sweet chin music. Seconds later, Big Show hits Booker with a chokeslam, and Earl, facing the right way now, suddenly counts the 3. X-Pac is over with Kevin Nash in the babyface corner as the NWO music hits, and he seems to be calling for a stretcher for Kevin Nash, who hasn't moved since he went down in the corner. Shawn then takes the microphone and cuts a promo, one that seems a bit off the cuff, as if they're trying to pad out the final segment of Raw, what with the main event ending so abruptly. Michaels warns Triple H that he'll either stand with the NWO at vengeance or end up face down like all the rest. And with that, Raw very suddenly ends with Shawn Michaels looking very concerned, leading the NWO up the ramp as Kevin Nash is helped out by Big Show and WWE personnel. It wasn't too long after that Kevin Nash's diagnosis was revealed, a torn left quadriceps, not dissimilar to the injury that Triple H had not long come back from. This was Nash's second major injury since his WWE return, and with only 6 matches under his belt as well. He underwent surgery with Dr. James Andrews in Birmingham, Alabama, and would spend the rest of the year and the early part of next year on the sidelines. X-Pac, having made it through a rough day that saw him in hospital with no idea how he got there, was sent home. That 10-man tag would end up being his final WWE match, as he'd be released from the company by SummerSlam, something Jim Ross actually announced on commentary. He'd head to TNA from there and would spend several more years in conflict with his demons before finding a way out, later being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. So this just left the Big Show and Shawn Michaels propping up an already beleaguered New World Order. Vince McMahon made the decision to unceremoniously pull the plug on the whole thing. The following week on Raw, Vince declared that the NWO was history and a new era of WWE would begin immediately, with new general managers to run Raw and SmackDown and a hunger for more inter-brand competition. Stephanie McMahon was installed as new GM of SmackDown, and former NWO management representative Eric Bischoff was shockingly installed as the GM of Raw. But what about Triple H? He has a big decision to make next week about joining the NWO. You know, the thing that doesn't exist anymore. Remember that? Instead, the game went to vengeance, where Bischoff and Stephanie vied to sign him to an exclusive brand deal. He was eventually swayed by his best friend Shawn Michaels, a Raw guy, and it led to Triple H moving to Monday nights, giving us the DX entrance with HBK in his side, and then pedigreeing Shawn Michaels to the floor. Triple H could no longer have that SummerSlam match with the monster Kevin Nash, so a deal was struck that would see Shawn Michaels test the waters with an in-ring comeback. The result was a match that instilled all of the fans, the locker room, and Shawn himself with the confidence that there was plenty more gas in the tank for the Heartbreak Kid, as he embarked on an 8-year career comeback that many argue was greater than his previous decade. And no, we're not counting that thing in 2018. Nope, stop it, we're not. He lost to The Undertaker, he retired, he became a chef, the end. That's it. A backstage political power dissolved when the NWO did as well. But it didn't mean all was right in the world of Monday Night Wrestling. No, far from it. The beloved Paul "You Don't Want Me in the Photograph" Levesque that we know today was not that Paul then. This series of events led to what became known in WWE folklore as the Reign of Terror, with Triple H pulling the legs off up-and-comers like they were daddy long legs in the hands of a naughty child, as he treated Monday Night Raw as a weekly convention where he cosplayed as Ric Flair. The story never ends, as Paul himself has told us. But how the story twisted and turned in the summer of 2002 is incredible to look at, all off the back of this cursed 10-man tag. Things could have been so different if only Disco Inferno had packed the knee brace. Stay safe. Love you. Bye.